Good evening. In a week of remarkable developments, another stunner tonight from the Soviet Union. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev announced he is resigning as head of the Soviet Communist Party and recommended that the party's ruling Central Committee be disbanded, which in effect would mean the end of communist rule in the Soviet Union. Our chief European correspondent, Tom Fenton, is in Moscow again tonight and has the latest. Tom?
Bob, it's a decision of historic importance. The party that has ruled this country for 7 decades, that promoted worldwide communism and controlled almost every aspect of life in this country, has been given the death sentence by its own boss. During hours of top-level meetings in the Kremlin, Gorbachev was finally persuaded to abandon the party that had betrayed him in the coup. He left his office there this evening without announcing the decision himself. It was read the old-fashioned way on Soviet TV, very near the end of the evening newscast. He recommended that the Central Committee dissolve the party and ordered it stripped of its vast properties. Communist activity was banned in the army, the KGB, and other state organizations. Former Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze said he had tried for 2 years to persuade Gorbachev to leave the party. Gorbachev, until the end, was reluctant to abandon his lifelong commitment to communism. But today, he looked like a beaten man. Beaten by his rival, Boris Yeltsin, who is now the effective ruler of the Soviet Union. Yeltsin, as president of Russia, issued more sweeping decrees today, confiscating the files of the Communist Party and the KGB throughout Russia. Investigators have already seized the files of former KGB chief Khrushchev, who has now been arrested. His office was searched and the contents of his desk and his safe were taken for evidence of possible wrongdoing. Khrushchev had reportedly prepared changes to the Soviet constitution to be made after the coup. Pravda, the party's newspaper that is published since 1912, was also shut down. Its deputy editor, Gennady Selednyaz, told CBS News that work on today's issue was suspended at 4 p.m. yesterday when the order came down. Shutting down a newspaper is hardly democratic, says Selednyaz. I hope that this wave of emotions will soon subside. Well, we don't know how long Gorbachev will stay on in his other job as president of the Soviet Union, but most of the Soviets I've spoken to hope he'll resign, but not too quickly. They want an orderly transfer of power in the new non-communist Soviet Union. Bob?
Tom, if he does stay on, is he anything more than a figurehead now, do you think, or can he stay on for any length of time at all?
Well, he's already a figurehead, taking orders from Yeltsin, and I doubt very much if he will stay on for long.
Tom, thank you. Earlier today, Gorbachev and Yeltsin joined hundreds of thousands of mourners in honoring 3 men who died resisting the coup. Anthony Mason now has that.
The procession stretched for 3 miles through the streets of Moscow, observed by a sea of somber faces. A revolution needs heroes, they say, and the supporters of democracy solemnly buried theirs today. 3 young men who died during the most frightening moments of the failed coup. Ilya, a 28-year-old architect, shot as he climbed aboard an armored personnel carrier. Dmitry, an Afghan war veteran, crushed by an advancing APC. And Volodya, an economist, who also died under the tank treads.
We hope that everybody will remember those young people who have perished, who have been killed.
Emotions almost overcame Mikhail Gorbachev as he declared them heroes of the Soviet Union. But the highest Soviet honor seemed almost inappropriate now. In a procession filled with banners and symbols today, you could not find a single Soviet flag. As much as this was a funeral for the coup's victims, many here hoped it was a funeral for the Communist Party. It's payback time for the party, read one banner in the crowd.
The major source of our problem is the communist dictatorship and their last-ditch effort to squelch democracy. It was a revelation for the whole Russians, and not just Russians, for the all nations in Russia.
The procession paused at the intersection where the 3 young men fell last Tuesday night, today renamed the Square of Free Russia. The bus barricades they defended still have not been moved. The families closely followed the caskets. I bow to the mothers and fathers, said Boris Yeltsin, who joined the march. Forgive me that I could not defend your sons. The caskets were carried to a Moscow cemetery, a nation that until recently suppressed all religion, saw an Orthodox and Jewish ceremony live on television. Then Ilya, Dmitry, and Volodya were buried side by side, new symbols on a new page of history. We have tasted democracy, said one mourner today, and now we know what to fight for. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
A spokesman confirmed today that Raisa Gorbachev is ill, but gave no details. There were rumors that she'd had a heart attack. Gorbachev said Thursday his wife was not well, but implied she is expected to recover. The Soviet Union moved closer toward disunion today. Literally, the parliament of the Ukrainian Republic declared independence pending a December referendum, and Boris Yeltsin formally recognized the independence of two Baltic states. Peter Van Zandt with more on that.
Hours after Russian President Boris Yeltsin recognized Latvia and Estonia as independent countries, Latvians began removing the symbol of communist rule in Riga, Vladimir Lenin. It was a moment most Latvians had waited for since Stalin's tanks rolled into their country 50 years ago.
It means the end of communist era in Latvia and also in Baltic states, and I hope in all the Soviet Union.
Earlier on this remarkable day, several hundred Latvians formed a human barricade at the local KGB building.
It is a peaceful action for our freedom.
Of course, to dismantle KGB, to close it.
The Latvian parliament then voted to ban the KGB and quickly moved in to stop the destruction of the spy agency's files on Latvian citizens. Politicians also demanded that all KGB agents in Latvia be named and that the agency surrender all its firearms.
Are they afraid?
Yes, they are.
Why?
Well, we just calm down them because we say we are not going to use force against you, but we just demand that you would lay down your weapons.
When a van emerged from within the KGB building, the crowd surrounded it and demanded that the driver be searched. Latvian police today allowed our camera inside the captured Communist Party headquarters in Riga. Everywhere there are signs of panic as frantic party workers tried to destroy as many files and documents as they could. This bathroom became an incinerator. Latvians searched for evidence that could be used to convict communist leaders. Latvia's leaders are keeping Moscow informed of their moves against the Communist Party and the KGB, but it's not Mikhail Gorbachev they're talking to, it's Boris Yeltsin, the man Latvians believe is the only real power left in the Soviet Union. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Riga, Latvia.
In Kennebunkport, President Bush hailed the new developments in Moscow. Wyatt Andrews is standing by in Kennebunkport with a report on that. Wyatt?
Bob, this resignation of Mikhail Gorbachev is exactly what the White House was hoping for, indeed angling for. And as you point out, they put out a statement tonight welcoming the move. You'll remember it was just 2 days ago that Gorbachev had set off all kinds of alarms around here by clinging to the party. Now the White House believes Gorbachev finally has the message that he has to embrace reform.
As it happened, the new U.S. ambassador, Robert Strauss, presented his credentials to Gorbachev in a 1-hour meeting today, but then went straight to a meeting with Boris Yeltsin. It is part of the U.S. strategy to seize this moment of confusion and push Gorbachev toward full market economic reforms, a controversial approach. Within the Western alliance, Germany now leads a faction arguing for immediate increases in Soviet aid, while the president argues the West should hold out for reform first.
The position of the United States is well known. We want to help. Eventually there may be a way we can help with money, but before that, we've got to see reforms in the Soviet Union.
Mr. Bush still sees the Soviet economy as the proverbial black hole, where cash assistance would only be wasted, and where foreign investment without legal change is too risky. Many specialists agree the whole atmosphere of Soviet business needs to change.
Encouraging as developments are, there still really aren't any kind of partners with whom we would deal and who would be the recipients.
The Western allies plan to meet and discuss Soviet aid in London this Thursday, but according to administration sources, the U.S. will go there with the same hard line. And that's specifically no change in the U.S. position of saying that the Soviets should get mostly technical aid, along with outright U.S. resistance to the notion that the Soviets should be offered cash. Bob?
Thank you, Wyatt.